thank you everyone for joining. I'm Allie Wenger with the Ames Chamber of Commerce, and we are kicking off our real estate session for the Future Ready Story County Virtual Career Fair. As a reminder, students, you're all muted, but please ask questions in the chat box, and Jason and I will do our best to make sure they all get answered. Jason, he's here, he's a realtor in town for Friedrich, and I'm going to turn it over to him to just introduce himself, talk a little bit about what he does on a day-to-day basis, and then we'll just kind of dive right into things.
Hi, again, my name is Jason Jennings with Friedrich Eye Realty. This is my fourth year being licensed realtor, second year doing it full-time. Previous 2 years, I was working with a builder as well and trying to sell real estate. Learned fairly quickly, real estate takes a lot more time than a part-time job. It's, if you're going to dive in, I recommend you dive all in. It's you could, once you kind of get the feel for it, you can probably scale back some, but to get into it and to be able to be successful, I do feel you need to jump in head first, because a big part of real estate is about relationships. Didn't mean a lot to me when I first heard that, but as you get to know people, talk to people, that's when you'll your business will start taking off. It's not just a transaction or a number. It's building a relationship, building trust with a person. On day-to-day thing, you know, every day is a little different. If you've got transactions going on, you're making sure the paperwork's where it needs to be. Real estate works somewhat well, even with COVID, because you can do all the paperwork online for the most part. Some people aren't comfortable with online, but we use dotloop for signatures. If you've got listings, you know, schedule photos, things like that. Every brokerage is a little bit different. Our brokerage is full service. They take part of the commission, and that pays for your desk, any copying, printing you need, things like that. They pay for our photos. So we always have professional photos, which I think no matter where you go, you've probably looked at photos online. Even if you have to pay for your own, it's worth the money for the professional photos. They look so much better.
Yes.
But probably the biggest part of my day is just being in contact with my active buyers and sellers. And then if there's a past client that needs help making a connection to a subcontractor or whatever, lawn guy, it doesn't matter. Just keeping in contact with your clients, I think, is probably the biggest part of your day-to-day.
Interesting. So can you walk us through the transaction process? What does that typically look like? I know is there a typical transaction process, I guess?
You know, they are all a little bit different, but if you're representing, say, the seller, you'll receive an offer in writing. You present it to the seller. It's rare that you just accept it on the first offer, unless they just, here's asking price cash, and then there's really no reason, which does happen sometimes. Usually not unless it's a multiple offer situation. But anyway, so once the negotiation's done, you know, you'll kind of go back and forth between the buyer and seller, and you're not just negotiating the price, you're negotiating whether they buy the house as is with an inspection clause, the number of days for that inspection, whether or not there's closing costs or prepaids to be given to the buyer. And then if you have an inspection clause, it's usually 7 to 10 business days you have from the accepted agreement to get that done. So the buyer at their expense hires a person or company to come do an inspection. They come out, and keep in mind, inspector's job is to find anything and everything wrong. It may not necessarily really be wrong, because a lot of what you'll see is something that's not up to today's code, but when it was done, it was up to code. So you'll see a lot of that.
Okay.
So you'll see a lot of GFIs, plugs not in kitchens, older homes especially. So anyway, then once the inspection's done, that becomes a negotiation too on what gets repaired, if anything. And that can be, hey, we'll fix it. Hey, we'll give you money towards it and you deal with it. So there's another small inspection or a negotiation that goes with inspections. In the meantime, paperwork's been sent to the bank and the closing department. And they start preparing the abstract to be updated to the new buyer. That goes to abstract title. Attorneys do deed and title work to make sure there's no liens or any money against the property that need to be freed up prior to the sale, because you don't want to pass that on to the new buyer. And then from there, a lot of it's just once everything's agreed on, waiting on closing date. The last big hurdle, I guess, after the inspection is appraisal, because everyone always puts an appraisal clause unless it's a cash deal, because you don't want to buy a house and then it appraise for more than appraise for less than you're paying for it, because then you're liable to pay the difference because the bank's not going to loan more than it appraises for.
Okay. So there's a lot of moving parts with
Yes.
that. How do you stay on top of all of that?
At our office, it's fantastic because we've got a closing department that deals with sending the abstract, coordinating with the attorneys for the title and the deed. Mostly I'm working with my client and getting the signatures needed. I'll order, if I'm more the buyer, I'll recommend inspectors, but most inspectors want the buyer to hire them, not me.
Okay.
When you're selling a house, there's a clause in the purchase agreement. You have to have a pest inspection. So I'll call them, have a pest inspection done. Is what you're looking for there are wood destroying insects. So termites, carpenter ants, something that's going to destroy the home, because you don't want to buy a home that's getting eaten alive.
Definitely not.
So, you get your files, and I've got a checklist, and checking to make sure these things are happening. But in a full service brokerage, a lot of it happens with the closing department, and that's part of what your commission goes towards, is to keep all that going so that you're not having to run. I know there are brokerages, you literally will take the abstract yourself. You'll run to the attorneys and pick up the deeds. And so you're a courier, you're everything.
That's a lot. That's a lot to have to keep track of. So to get into real estate, is there so basically what we're interested in learning about are the different career opportunities in real estate that require different levels of education. So when you're looking at whether it's the closing department or, other offices versus being a realtor like yourself, are there certain education expectations for those roles?
I don't know what our closing department's gone through. A lot of them seem to have banking backgrounds.
Okay.
Or something to that effect. But I do know that there's a newer agent in our office, and she's filling in with because we got really busy this year. It's low interest rates really made the real estate market great.
Good.
So COVID didn't slow us down, knock on wood.
Yay.
But we had to bring in some help for our closing department. They just more work than they could handle. So there was a newer agent that has been helping them. So I don't know if it's limited what she can do. So I'm not positive on the closing side for education. But you definitely have to be well organized, I'd say, because they're juggling a lot of paperwork and multiple files. We've got 40 plus agents in our office, and there's generally 2 of them, and they're handling every listing and every closing for us.
That's busy. So then, to be a licensed realtor, do you need to have a 2-year or a 4-year degree, or is there a certain training program instead that you would go through?
Yeah, so in Iowa, you have to do a 60-hour class to start, and it can be in classroom or online. I did mine online, and it about bored me to death. If I had to do it over again, I would do the classroom. It's a little more for classroom, but remember when I've talked to that did classroom, it's well worth it. A lot of that's because if you do online, you're studying everything. Whereas in classroom, they'll hit on everything, but they really focus on what you need for what's on the exam.
Okay.
So you've got the 60-hour pre-licensing class you take, and then you take 3 other 12-hour classes to get licensed. One's called buying practices, listing practices, and then developing professionalism and ethics. So 3 12-hour classes, and then you have to pass a state and national real estate exam. It's a proctored exam, so you go into a classroom and can't take anything with you, and they're monitoring and all that. So you take that, and then every 3 years you have to take the law and ethics update.
Okay.
So 8 hours of law, excuse me, allergies, 4 hours of ethics, and then you've got 24 hours of electives. And you can do those throughout the 3 years. So last December was my 3-year. So this year mine started over. So I've got 3 years to take those renewal classes. Some of them are free that you can find a lot of free ones online for the electives. Our board a lot of times will do a free once a year law or ethics, and it's first come, first served. My brokerage last year actually did a law and ethics for us, so we didn't have to pay for it. We do a state convention every year. You can get a lot of your electives done at that. You go there and just sign up for these little 1-hour classes. So a lot of ways to keep your license updated. And then
Yes.
you got monthly and annual dues you pay as well.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about some of the different aspects of real estate? Whereas, you've got your, I guess maybe the most commonly understood part is, the residential sales, buying and selling homes. But then there's also like property management and commercial leasing and selling. So can you kind of explain the difference between those big 3 areas?
Sure, let me grab that door so the dogs stop. One second.
You go right ahead. Sorry, students, thank you for being patient. We appreciate it. All righty, welcome back.
I apologize for that.
No worries.
So I've done just a little bit of commercial lease, but similar thing, you negotiate your lease terms on it. And then a lot of it's a little different because we're more just like note passers almost in the ones I've done, because the person wanting to lease the property will write a letter of intent with kind of their terms, and then we send it over to the other side. The property manager just reviews it, and so it's not really an official contract for a lot of it, like you do in a residential sale or in any sale, I guess. It's more just back and forth with letters of intent, and they'll redline it and go back and forth till they reach an agreement, and then you do a contract after it's all done.
Okay.
And it sounds like a lot of money when you're doing it, but it's not as much money as most houses or anything. I've often wondered how people make a living doing just commercial real estate, because it seems like when you're talking leases, and maybe it's different in bigger towns where there's more of it, but it's pretty small in comparison to most of the houses. And then I forgot what the other things you were talking about. The dogs barking distracted me.
Sorry. Well, like property management.
Yeah. So property management, we've got, and that's another thing in our office. So I don't, except for the property that I own, that I just kind of do on my own. I don't use a property management company, but we've got in-house property management. You do have to, if you want to manage other people's property, have to have a broker's license, which requires a little bit of additional schooling and examination. I haven't done that yet, so can't recall off the top of my head what that is, but you would need a broker's license if you wanted to manage other people's properties.
Okay. What is something that you love about your job?
Getting to know people. Many of my clients have become friends. It's not just a transaction. It really is, like I said at the beginning, about relationships and just getting to know the people. I think that was my struggle when I was with new construction. I loved building houses, but you're isolated. You're around a couple people all day and didn't get to meet the buyers oftentimes or build a relationship with them. Other parts of the building company did, because they were going through the design process things. I was more the hands-on guy.
Okay.
But yeah, my favorite thing is the relationships and getting to know the people and becoming friends.
Okay. And what is some of the hardest parts of your job?
Sometimes when it gets a little slower, like in the winter, like what am I to do with my day?
Yeah.
So sometimes you feel like, and I guess on the flip side, in the summer when it's really busy, Ames is, or real estate as a whole, but Ames seems to even more, is a big roller coaster. People just in the winter, you don't sell as many houses. No one wants to move in the winter. But sometimes in your busiest times, May through July are your busiest months. And even August can be, but people take a lot of vacation in August, so it tends to slow a little. But trying to juggle a lot at once some days. So kind of both sides of it. The really slow, it's like, what do I do? And then trying to make sure you're on top of everything when it's really busy.
Yeah. So time management sounds like it's pretty important.
Yes.
And so do you spend a lot of time in the office? Do you feel like you're kind of your own boss and you're free to manage your time the best way you see fit?
Certainly, yeah. I do spend a lot of time in the office. I find a lot of value in it if I don't have to be somewhere, because you hear what's going on with other agents. Sometimes you'll hear of a house coming on the market before it hits the market, or a buyer needing, like, hey, I've got a house coming on. So a lot of times just being in the office, you hear things like that. But it also, even though you're kind of competing against each other, you are still somewhat of a team. So for me, I find great value in it. But at the same time, you are your own boss. You can be in the office as much or as little as you want. Some people only come in just to do their paperwork, and that's the only time you see them. I go in there for pretty much every day and work on everything. If I'm working on social media posts or paperwork, or sometimes just in there to be away from the house.
Yes. So. It sounds like it's a pretty social field. Like you said, making and managing those relationships, and both with colleagues and clients. So what would you tell students? What advice do you have for students who are interested in getting into real estate?
Come to the office, check it out. Job shadow someone for a day, or maybe a couple days, because every day is different. There's no 2 days alike. But yeah, if there's a brokerage, someone, go hang out at that brokerage for a day. If you don't know, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to give you a tour of the day in the life. But yeah, that's what I would say. And then if you do first start, I would recommend shadowing someone for a little bit, because it is kind of tough when you first start not knowing what you should be doing.
Yeah.
Once things get going, it's a little easier, but yeah, just go to a brokerage and check it out.
Do you think that do you think real estate is a growing industry? I mean, what's the job outlook in our area? Are there plenty of opportunities?
I think so. You know, someone told me when I got my license, they're like, "You sure there's 200 agents in Ames?" And I said, "Well, there's a lot more than 200 houses."
Yeah.
And I feel like as long as the college is here in Ames and as long as the college is successful, Ames is going to continue to be successful with real estate.
Great. That's a really great way to think about it. There are a lot more than 200 houses here in Ames, aren't there?
Yeah. Thank goodness.
Yes, yes. Um, so I guess with that, I think that wraps things up. I really appreciate your time. Students, if you have any last minute questions, feel free to post them, but I learned a lot today. I know that it's a really daunting thing, real estate, especially with paperwork and the legal side of things and making sure everything is handled properly. And so thank you for breaking it down and helping us understand what that process looks like. And it's great to hear that there's plenty of opportunity in real estate here in Ames. Oh, great. Jason went ahead and he added his contact information. So if anyone would like to shadow, feel free to reach out to him directly. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, or if you just have any questions that come up later, feel free to reach out.
Yes, awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.